Welcome to All About the Feels. I'm your host, Robyn Heidelberg, a proud mom of two and a teacher with 15 years of experience in the classroom. My journey into the world of sensory processing and neurodiversity is deeply personal. My 8.5-year-old son has mixed expressive-receptive language disorder, sensory processing disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, fine motor delay, and balance coordination difficulties. Challenges that together would qualify as autism. His sensory processing disorder is especially severe, shaping every aspect of our family's daily life. Here on All About the Feels, I'm going to share real stories, expert insights, and practical strategies for families, educators, and anyone navigating the complex world of sensory needs. Whether you're seeking understanding, support, or just a place to feel seen, you're in the right spot. Let's explore the ups, downs, and everything in between together. Welcome to today's episode of All About the Feels, where we'll be diving into the fascinating world of sensory processing, specifically the 8 types of sensory processing that can be affected in sensory processing disorder, or SPD. Whether you're a parent, educator, therapist, or just curious, understanding these sensory systems is key to recognizing and supporting those with SPD. Before I even start explaining what sensory processing disorder is, let's talk the medical field. Unfortunately, sensory processing disorder is not on the DSM-5, so it's technically not a medical disorder, and a lot of doctors do not recognize it. They recognize sensory processing difficulties instead of a disorder or a condition. Some doctors do recognize it. So hopefully, with spreading more awareness of SPD, eventually it will end up on the DSM-5. So let's get to it. Sensory processing disorder is a condition where the brain has trouble receiving and responding to information that comes in through the senses. People with SPD may be over responsive, or under responsive, or they could crave certain sensory experiences, and this can affect one or more of their sensory systems. Now we have sensory systems. Everyone would say, yeah, we have 5 senses. They're the typical ones we all know: sight, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touch. But guess what? There's more than just those 5. There are actually 8. And so hopefully this will give you enough information to help you understand that there's more than just the typical 5 senses that we are taught in school or know about. So we're going to talk a little bit about each of the sensory systems, and we're going to discuss how it can be a part of your daily life and how it could affect. But I'm going to not go into great detail about that because that's going to be more in our future episodes. But I just want you to get an overall feel of what the sensory systems are. So the first one we're going to start with is visual, which is your sight. This is our ability to interpret what we see: shapes, colors, movement, spatial relationships. Think about it. You're constantly looking out at the world and there's all these things around you. Someone with SPD might be overly bothered by bright lights. Yes. Think about like when you're in the movie theater for 1 to 2 hours and it's super dark and you come out and it's a sunny day and you're like, oh, it's so bright, and it bothers you because you've been in dark for so long. Well, that is the feeling that SPD people could have on a regular basis. Office lights can make them feel like that, or the fluorescent lighting in a classroom, or just the sun in general, even if they haven't been in a dark place before walking out into the sun. They also can struggle to find objects in a cluttered space. Now, my son is 8.5, and yes, I have to say 8.5. There's a long story that will come to that at some point in our episodes. That's quite funny of why I have to say the half part. Anyways, my 8.5-year-old son has had SPD all of his life. I should know better than to send him to his room or the basement where like a lot of our toys are stored and say, go look for it or go find it, because I know he is going to have visual overwhelm feeling and freak out because he's going to walk into a room and not really look. You would think with all of my experience of SPD, I would not do that. But yet I still put myself into that situation and then listen to him freak out and melt down because he can't find the said object in the said room, even when it's most likely right in front of him, because it is overwhelming visually for him. So that's just one example. Okay, let's move on to auditory. That's hearing. So this sense processes sounds, including their volume, pitch, and rhythm. Auditory challenges might look like covering their ears at everyday noises or not responding to their name when being called. Now, I say when it comes to SPD, it is not a physical disability, because you could look at anyone, any human being, and they could have it and you would have no idea. It's not as easy as seeing someone in a wheelchair. But there is one thing that sometimes makes kids with SPD or adults with SPD stand out, and that is noise canceling headphones. And they can be a very useful tool that not a lot of parents think about when they don't have the experience. I mean, in my classroom, I have 6 pairs of noise canceling headphones that hang on 3M hooks, those little hooks on the wall. And they're there for anyone who needs them, because noises can be overwhelming. In a classroom, kids can get loud and it can be bothersome. Fire drills. Oh, that fire alarm. Yes, it's awful to all of us, but it can be extremely awful to a kid with SPD. So my son wears noise canceling headphones all the time. And I mean, we could be at a noisy restaurant. In the classroom, he doesn't really wear them as much. It's more like when he's in the cafeteria or in the gym getting picked up for the end of the day, when all of the pickups and loud, like the kids are just talking. He wears them to church. We can go into more detail about that, but noise canceling headphones are very obvious. Okay, let's move on to the third one that we all know, which is smell. It's the olfactory sensory system. So our sense of smell helps us detect and differentiate odors. With SPD, some people might be extremely bothered by certain smells, while others may not notice strong odors at all. So you might have the kid who wants to sniff objects or people because that's how they explore their environment. Maybe the walking into a kitchen that has a strong smell of like garlic or something can make them gag, or they refuse to enter the kitchen. Or they might not even notice odors that are overpowering. Like, I don't know, when you smell like fish, that could be just too much and they might not even notice it. So that's kind of the two ends of the smell sensory system. Like you could be either or whatever way. Okay, then we have taste, which is the gustatory system. Taste allows us to experience flavors. Think about our taste buds. We can taste so many different flavors, just like salty, sweet, bitter, sour. But sensory processing issues here can mean that you might have a really picky eater, or you might have the child who is like seeking those strong flavors. Like they really love all the spicy food and they only want spicy food, or they go after sour stuff. My son loves sour gummies and all the sour candies, but he's an extremely picky eater. And honestly, when it comes to food, sometimes it goes down to texture. And when we get to this episode, I have all the things that it can affect, because I've probably been in every situation when it comes to food and my son eating. Okay. Our final one that is common out of the 5 that we all know is tactile, which is touch. This is all about how we perceive touch. So that could be textures, that could be pressure, it could be pain, or even temperature. So tactile sensitivities may cause discomfort with like clothing tags or certain fabrics or even light touches, while others might not notice injuries or extremes in temperatures. So you would think that I would be the master at removing all clothing tags. But I will say, sometimes one gets by me, or the little plastic tag that they attach. It's like the little stitch that goes through like the tag, like the price tag, and it's plastic. If you don't get both ends, if you cut it, apparently I'm really bad at those sometimes, especially when they're in the seam. And let me tell you, even if it's in the seam, I'm going to hear about it and I'm going to know, oh, mom left a tag in, because it is going to literally drive my son insane, and he will whine and complain and let me know that he is not wearing that shirt, or he's not wearing those shorts or those pants until, or even those socks, until it is removed, because it does not feel right. Some people don't like sand or finger paint. They might avoid hugs. They might not do well with like warm to cold temperatures outside, like changing the clothing, but they might also have struggles with like pool temperature or the shower or bath temperature. Okay, so we've talked about the 5 that are common. We have 3 more. Now, the vestibular is all about balance and movement. The vestibular system helps us with balance and spatial orientation. So an SPD can cause someone to avoid the playground, or you could be constantly seeking out spinning and swinging activities. So a child might avoid the swings, the slides, or even escalators because the movement makes them feel dizzy or anxious. But sometimes when you have SPD difficulties with this, you can crave movement, spinning in circles, jumping on trampolines, swinging for long periods of time, because it makes the child or person feel calm and focused. My son is the one who is spinning in circles, jumping on trampolines, swinging for long periods of time. It makes him feel calm. He's focused. He loves them. He enjoys them. When he was 2.5 and we had his OT evaluation, he was spun 10 times around one direction, stopped for 1 second, turned and did 10 the other direction. And normally, if you're affected by spinning and you feel dizzy, your eyes do like this like shaking thing that you can tell like, ooh, I'm dizzy. Well, he did not. He has no idea when he's dizzy. So if he starts spinning, I have to like stop him at some point and be like, dude, you gotta take a break, because his body does not know when he is dizzy. He loves going to trampoline parks to jump on trampolines, and he has a swing in his bedroom. So we'll talk more about that later too. Okay, this is the one that I always mispronounce, and you would think I'd be a pro at it, but I'm not, and it's okay. Proprioception. I think I said it right. Go me. Sorry. Okay. That is your body awareness. So it's our sense of where our body is in space and how much force we're using. So unfortunately, difficulties here look like clumsiness, bumping into things, or using too much or little force when handling objects. My son is clumsy. He bumps into things, but he definitely uses too much pressure. He doesn't know how tightly he's holding your hand or how hard he's pushing down on crayons or like pencils. He breaks crayons very easily because he uses too much force. He also he doesn't always know where his body is in the world around him. So he bumps into things, but he also enjoys roughhousing and crashing into pillows. Like I said, crashing and jumping are his go-to things. One OT in his life asked me, is your house completely padded? And I'm like, no, but it probably should be, because he loves crashing and jumping into things of there were crash pads all over our house, he would love life. Sometimes they prefer to do heavy work like carrying heavy backpacks or crawling, pushing, pulling, and they might even chew on objects. So those are some things that you would see if they have SPD with body awareness. Our final and eighth sensory system is interoception, which is your internal body signals. Interoception is the awareness of internal body cues, like hunger or thirst, or even using the restroom. People with SPD might not recognize when they're hungry. They might not realize when they need to go to the restroom, and they may have even frequent stomach aches without a clear cause. So a person may not realize that they're hungry until they're extremely irritable. If they have some difficulties with internal body signals, they might not realize that they have to go to the restroom until it's urgent, or they might just be harder to potty train. My son, it took 3 different times to potty train him, and he did not become potty trained until he was 5. And as much as it sucked knowing that like all of my friends' kids and his cousins were potty trained before him, it just is what it is. I couldn't compare him to other people. And we can talk more about that when we get to that episode as well. But also, I mean, they may not be able to feel or know how to describe how they feel inside. Let me say that. They know how they feel inside, but they can't describe it to us. They're sometimes even unaware of pain. So overall, there are 8 sensory systems, and understanding these 8 sensory systems and how they show up in daily life can help us empathize with and support those with sensory processing disorder. Each person's sensory profile is unique. So like my son could act this way with this sensory system, but his friend could act completely different. It's not cookie cutter. There are so many varieties and so many differences that really you have to know the child or you have to know the person to help them and understand them. If we recognize those differences, though, that is our first step toward creating a supportive environment. You can be supportive as a teacher or a parent or a family friend or someone out in the community if you understand their differences in these sensory systems, and if you understand it. If you're a coach, maybe you have a kid struggling with some things. It could be because one of their sensory systems is being affected by whatever sport they're playing. So SPD can affect each of these systems in different ways. And I mentioned this like very at the beginning of the podcast episode, but I kind of want to talk about it a little bit more. So you can be over responsive, and that means the person is hypersensitive and may react strongly or negatively to that sensory input. You could be under responsive, which is the person is less responsive or even unaware of certain stimuli. Or you can be the sensory seeking. So you could be a seeker, and that's when the person craves that sensory input and may actively seek out intense sensations. Like my son craves spinning, craves jumping and crashing. So each sensory system can be impacted in any of those ways, and everyone's experience with SPD is totally unique. So recognizing that there are 8 sensory systems, not just the traditional 5, helps us better support individuals with SPD, and it explains why some children might be a picky eater, why others avoid hugs, or why some are always on the move. By understanding these sensory differences, we can create more supportive environments at home, in schools, and in communities. Sensory processing disorder is complex and can affect any or all of the 8 sensory systems. My son doesn't fall typical in any sensory system. If you suspect someone you know is struggling with sensory processing, seek guidance from an occupational therapist, a doctor, or a sensory specialist. Remember, everyone's sensory profile is unique, and with the right support, individuals with SPD can thrive. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll discuss practical strategies and go more in depth on managing sensory challenges in everyday life and talking about the specific 8 sensory systems.